Put on the spot. What could it be?
If I stop abruptly in any way, just know I'm taking off my pants.
I don't think I wanted to know that.
Because it's hot. It's starting to get hot.
Actually, yeah.
Not that kind of hot. I mean, temperature hot.
Yeah, I know.
It's in
I didn't
degrees.
even I didn't even interpret
Fahrenheit.
it that way. What do you mean?
What do you mean?
What do you mean?
Get your mind out the gutter.
Wait, handy.
Okay, Andy, Frank, what topics do you want to
Explore.
Yep.
Something you want to know more about.
Anything? All right, I'll come back to you.
Kai, you haven't figured out anything? No?
Cal,
Hello.
are there any specific art questions or art topics that you need like further expansion on?
I guess I'm going like through a bit of an art block. Does that count as a topic? Tuesday.
Tuesday is the topic.
Tuesday. On Tuesdays we draw.
Yeah, we could talk about art blocks. Okay.
Oh my gosh, Jeff.
Hair and fur.
Oh, actually, yeah.
Okay, Kirby. I hope everyone who hasn't gone yet is like thinking about what topics they want.
Thinking. What's that?
I second color palettes. That Kai
Wait, what?
suggested. Color palette
palettes.
and how to best
Okay.
utilize those.
Okay. Tito, Kato, Po, Kato.
Tito, Tito, Tito. Tito, Tito, Tito.
Okay, line weight.
Huh.
You could tell my handwriting started warming up the lower I got, because it's definitely neater. Okay, exploring. Different ideas. Hey, BB.
quickly. You got this.
I know exactly how she's saying it. Art style dissection. And then how to bridge it into yours. How to own it. You want to own it. Okay, let's start, shall we? The very first topic that I'm pretty sure everyone here has trouble with. Nori,
Hey, Nori.
since you just joined, what topics do you want to discuss? Is there anything you're struggling with? Is there anything you want expansion on? Something you want to know? Is it already on this list? Say dynamic poses for Nori. All right, no worries. All right, so the first portion or the first topic is perspective, right? So we all know perspective is it's basically like a type of angle, right? Um if we were to treat this box, that is not a box. This box as a very neutral-esque position, right? We're looking dead at it, right? With perspective, that means the camera is no longer centered, right? To the point where we can see it straight forward. Perspective is off at an angle somewhere. Um, so when you pivot your position of angle, you now begin to have like a more three-dimensional aspect of it and a viewpoint from, we'll label this as 1 and 2, right? If the camera focus is at position 2, we are going to get a box that looks like this, right? Because technically, if we're still level with it, we're not going to see like top or bottom, and we're going to look directly at a specific angle, right? But then if we choose to go higher with this camera, and we'll go to option 3. This is perspective 2. The perspective will be more or less like that in perspective 3, right? We get to see more of the object that we're viewing, right? Because we have an aerial angle looking down at the sides as well. We're covering this line here. We can see this face as well. We can see the top and we can see this side, right? So if we take perspective in terms of cubes, boxes, stuff like that, we'll be able to understand it a little better. Because if you break it down into cubic shapes, you can see if a perspective matches. Because what happens when you put a square on a square on top of a square? Fail.
Wait. The square on top of the square?
Yeah.
I mean, as in, like, my brain is too dumb right now.
Are there any spaces? They fit perfectly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you played Minecraft before, right?
Yeah, Alex.
Well, if you can break it down into kind of like a Minecraft-esque dimensions, right? So if we know if we have a perspective of, let's say this is the head, right? We are getting into a neutral, we're getting into like a neutral 3/4 perspective, semi-aerial, right? The camera's high up. And then if we get into the perspective, we can create a little Minecraft character. Erase the things that we can't see. Right? Do you see how now we've established a type of perspective with this character? If that character can fit inside the box, right, of what you set it out to look, as long as it's following the right perspective of the overall box or cube, you can essentially know that the perspective is correct, right? An easier way of doing this is actually if you just did a bigger cube like this. And then drew the character inside, matching the perspective. Or a more advanced version of doing this is if you want to test your spatial awareness. Spatial awareness is being able to take a cube like this and rotating it any way that you see it in your head and replicate what you see in your head, right? If I rotated it like 45 degrees, yeah, if I rotated it like 45 degrees and then I rotated it 30 degrees counterclockwise, with this square, I would probably get an angle like that because I rotated it on its x-axis. Wait, I rotated it on its x-axis, 45 degrees. And then I also rotated it on a YZ axis, 30 degrees. Do you guys understand this? So if you think about it in terms of like a cube being rotated in your head, if you can move it on its x, y, and z axis, usually these are combined to rotate like diagonally. But if you can rotate the cube in the x, y, and z axis in your head and replicate it through your own drawing, your spatial awareness, that should give you spatial awareness practice, right? So that way, if you see like for example, if you see a hat, right, straight on, you also have to know the object too. That's the other thing. If it's like a baseball hat, right, and you wanted to rotate it on its y-axis, then you would get, the hole and then the cap, right? But if you wanted to rotate it on its x-axis with its yz axis, we're going to get like an angle here of the hat. But then there's also the lip behind it. So you have to remember that stuff. That's what I mean by knowing your objects. There's going to be inside ones going out. Being able to rotate objects in your head definitely helps you a lot with how to work things in perspective. But essentially, if you're drawing something in one perspective, it has to kind of match the entire thing, right? And we've seen this happen in terms of clothes. If the perspective is like this, some of you guys are doing clothes where the curve goes against the grain. And what I mean by against the grain is this initial curve here for the perspective is curved downwards. You would also have to make the t-shirt follow the same perspective. Right? Because imagine if you get the head perspective correct on here, and then your t-shirt goes against the grain. Doesn't it kind of look weird compared to if you got it with the grain? I don't know why he doesn't have a neck. Just disregard him not having a neck. It's a birth defect. But yeah, I hope that helped, Bale.
Yep.
Is anyone else lost with perspective? This is gonna I'm gonna touch deeper, a little deeper when it comes to environmental because, well, actually, I'll just say it now because we're getting into backgrounds. But perspective is definitely super, super important when it comes to the background too. And I've seen some people put things that are supposed to be far off into the distance, relatively the same size as everything else, right? So, like, if we take an example of like a street, and let's say this is a sidewalk. Yes, I said sidewalk, Cal, because that's what it is.
Pavement.
This is the pavement. And this is the sidewalk. That's a K.
Just ignore that.
Okay, so drawing the sidewalks on both sides of the street, right? This can be expanded until you can't see it anymore, or up until they come to like a certain point. We in our minds know that they don't come to a certain point because these look parallel. That's just how our brain sees things at a horizon, right? So let's say we continue this. I see some people who make buildings and stuff roughly the same size as the building near it, right? Some things need to be at a different size when you're dealing with perspective, right? Because if something's further away, if you have a tree that is further away, it is going to be smaller than the tree that is here, right? It only makes sense because the further something looks, the smaller it looks, right? So we have to match it and make sure when you guys are drawing to have this on a different layer. Because if you end up messing up, you can always increase the size of it based on your needs, right? If something looks off because of perspective, it's mainly because of the angle. It's either the angle that you chose or the size. Those are the two most common mistakes that people do with perspective in backgrounds. It's either the size or the angle of the object, right? Also, when you guys are doing certain things, like bookshelves, I've noticed a lot of beginner artists when they do something like bookshelves in a perspective. uh, 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 Sorry if this is scuffed. But when they do the bookshelves, the books on the bookshelf do not match the perspective, right? Because it's a cube, all of it's basically like a prism, like a rectangular prism. You can rotate it in ways where you can see the pages, like you'll get a little bit glimpse of the pages. Another thing that I noticed is that they don't use different everything seems neat, right? Like all the books are apparently like the same size. when in most cases they're not. Sometimes you'll get taller books that cover the entire thing, right? Sometimes you'll get one small book in between, and then you'll get like a tall book. Books vary in width as well. I only really use 1 to 2 point perspectives, right? 1 point perspective is if you pick a dot, just like that street view that we did. 2 point perspective is when you have another point, and then basically it comes here, and then you're getting like, let's say, the side of a building, right? But 3 point perspective is very, very difficult to pull off, mainly because there's just way too many angles that you have to think about. I think 2 is max that anyone should go. All right. Yeah. So I wouldn't recommend playing with 3 point perspective if it's gonna frustrate you. I would just master 1 and 2 point. Yeah, like all the time that you're putting into learning 3 point perspective, you can put the same amount of time into enhancing 1 to 2 point perspectives. I mean, the only way the only way that I feel like you can do a 3 point perspective is really when you're like when you want to deal with like a when you're dealing with like a city building is probably like the easiest. Wait a minute, hold on. I have one here, and then the other one here. Yeah, so if you take like a city building like this would be a 3 point perspective. But yeah, it will be warped. Yes. But if that's the perspective that you choose, I usually don't deal with it. I just pick 2 or 1. Because you can easily just make this level, create the sky point for it, and then make it straight, and then still have like the character in here somewhere. Easier with a 1 point perspective. If that's the case, Kai, have you guys ever done scenes before? I know I mentioned this a while back. Have you guys done scenes? So in the world of animation, right? A lot of animators build scenes first. They do a lot of scene building in order to do things. And then knowing values also helps with background creations. Because if you take, let's gray this. Okay, so if we do this one's a little smaller. Let's make this a little bigger. Okay. I'm gonna lock the layer, right? Yeah. So basically you're going to scene build, right? We know that the skies are usually of lighter value, right? So we can throw that in both, right? And then we take the base color, and then now we can mold it. If we want like a mountainside, right, in the background, we could do that. We'll do it on both. And then you go darker, slightly darker for slight foreground, right? And then let's say we wanted like some houses, some huts in the background, right? This will be a road coming up. And then we'll get some dirt in this one. Like a plot of dirt. And then we'll have to go lighter because crop is lighter than dirt. Right, we're gonna stick that in there. Since we're up closer, we're gonna add some houses a lot closer. Right, some more huts closer. Gonna be some windows. Make it slightly darker. There's gonna be some barrels out here. Right, maybe like a clothesline for clothes. Grab a lighter color, make a fence if you wanted. And then if you have this, right, all set, you can go towards like a darker color, and then you can draw certain characters. You can draw a character in the foreground. is Nichiren Blade Tanjiro. And then let's say you're having problems with fitting the character into the background, right? If there's like a chair or something, you have to draw the chair first and then draw the character inside the chair, if that makes sense. You always draw the object first, even if they're holding like a cup or something, right? You have to draw the object first and then draw the character interaction second. Does that make sense, Kai? Yeah, so if we're talking like this is grass, right? This is the road, and then we have like this stone thing, and then we have like a chair here. Has like the fancy little thingies. Right, we're going to draw the character inside the chair, right? So if this plane right here for the chair is where the top and the bottom meet, the ass has to be on the bottom. Right? So that's a way you could do it. That'll be a lot easier than drawing the character first. You have to draw the scene first. When a background is involved, you always have to draw the scene first, because not your ideas might not look right once you see it. So backgrounds, plan it out, right? With this one that I finished. For the rough draft, I drew this first, right? And then I drew the character on top, and then I blocked it out with color or grayscaled, and then I added the colors of the background just to kind of see how things were. Yeah, but having the character being on its own, I was able to shift it either higher or lower, right? When I had it this high, it looked like there was a wang coming out of her forehead, right? Or her head. So I pulled down so I could see the smoke from the rocket. And then we were able to do the background, right? I had this grayed out after I had the line art, and then once I colored it in, everything kind of worked. So take your time, definitely do your scenes, and then you should be good to do backgrounds. Okay. Art block. Art block. Cow.
Hello.
So what's going on? Let's hear it.
I guess rather than like art block, it's a bit more kind of like anxiousness around drawing, and then
Why are you having anxiousness?
I don't know, man.
Is it because are you scared of something? Are you afraid of the result?
Potentially, yeah. I feel like that's probably what it is.
Are you afraid of the process?
I'm okay with the process, but I think it's kind of just
Is it because it's overwhelming? Is it
I think
because the process is overwhelming?
I think I'm okay with the process, but it's kind of overwhelming if despite kind of doing process. Despite going through the process, it's kind of overwhelming when the result isn't as I would have liked it to be, and then that kind of keeps making me kind of, I guess, more anxious about
All
working.
right, here's something that this I've only really heard this in the gaming community, right?
Mhm.
So you play League, right?
Unfortunately, yes.
Right? Have you ever like hard stomped someone?
No.
Like you ever win, but then it doesn't feel like a win?
Yeah, actually, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So even when you win, right? And in a lot of games, like when you win games, like even this applies to like Apex, this applies to like Dead by Daylight, League, right? Like even if you win, there are still things you can do yourself that help change the outcome, right? There are things that you could do better, right? And everyone will always feel like that, right? No one's just you just have to get over the fact that you're never going to be 100% completely satisfied with what you put out, right? I don't think anyone here is ever completely satisfied with what they put out, myself included. But once you get over that hump, it's more or less the enjoyment of the process of improving, right? Like
Yeah.
each art piece, if you're not satisfied with the art piece, right? Um, just focus on the little things that are going to help you improve, right? Like just be happy with what you did during that process that you did differently that helped a lot, right? So let's say you colored it differently, you did a different pose for the first time, right? It may not look right on your first try, but with all these little baby steps adding up into one big step, you'll notice over time that your art changes and improves drastically, right? If you keep a piece that you have from like a year ago, right, and compare it to yourself now, you'll see that there is improvement happening, right? Unless you don't keep any of your art from a year ago.
Burn it. No, but yeah, I do have old art that I can compare to.
Yeah. So I mean, the improvement is always going to come, right? It's a matter of, are you implicating the tools in order to improve, right? Are you trying out new things, right? Are you challenging yourself? If you're comfy, if you want to stay comfy where you're at right now, that means that you fully accepted that the outcome that you're producing is like, it provides you, it makes you content, right? And if that question, if that answer to your question, like if the answer to that question of what you're producing now is no, then you should continue challenging yourself to potentially see what you'll become, right? Yeah, it's basically complacency. Those are the ones that, you know, they stay the same. They're very happy with how they draw. And I see a lot of this in people who draw a lot of chibis, right? Because chibis they're easy to produce, right? They look cute when it's done, and then that's the extent of it, right? Uh, you can't do it's very hard to do something more than chibis once you've gotten into the rhythm of just doing chibis over and over again, right? Vivi is she's an example of someone who's trying to branch out from chibis, and she's having a tough time, right? But we're all here to help. So it's more or less like, how do you want to be as an artist, and what steps can you make to your art that will help you get to that goal or near that goal, right? Because one, it's never going to be perfect. Two, you're never going to be satisfied, right? So you just have to kind of get over it, and you have to accept those facts, right? Once you accept those facts, you can start having fun, right? Because the art process is supposed to be fun, right? You're supposed to have a good time in creating content. And that's what art is. It's either, like, for a lot of people, uh it's fun creating content. For other people, it's a means of an escape, right? You had a stressful day at work, you want to doodle, you want to draw something, right? So when art blocks happen, that means you're kind of withdrawing yourself from the entire process. Your mind is withdrawing itself from the entire process because I want to say it's because, like, you're scared of a particular aspect of the process, whether it's the outcome, the process itself, or just simply starting, right? But sometimes you just have to find the enjoyment in doing it, and you also have to find inspiration and motivation, right? Because motivators will make you, or create the urge to do art, right? And inspirations will help you produce a goal, right? If you have inspirations or artist inspirations, right? If there's anyone you look up to, um, if there's an art style you really look up to because it's captivating, right? It like takes the breath out of your uh, I forgot the saying, but it leaves you breathless, whatever, that type of stuff, right? If you find inspiration in those things, and you actually put the time in to stare at their art and learn from it, right? Maybe try it out in your next one. And this will I'm going to mention a lot of that in the art style dissection, right? When we get to it. But it's when you find an inspirational artist that you look up to, just keep looking at their work. If it's beautiful, find out why it's beautiful, right? Is it the colors they use? Is it the pose that they use, right? Is it their anatomy? Is it their style of drawing hair? Like, what makes it speak to you as an appreciator of this inspiration, right? And once you find that out, once you ask yourself those questions, you can then turn that into a motivator to start drawing, right? And you can make that a goal. Like, I want to develop a style, or I want to create art that helps, move people. I don't know. For me, it's like, how horny can I get them? Sometimes.
Thank you.
But yeah, if you ever get into an art block, you could take a break for 24 hours. Don't draw anything, but just look at art, right? If you look at, I would say, I don't know how watching art streams would help, because it's like a lot of distractions, right? But I would just go on like Twitter. I would look up, your artists, your favorite artists. They retweet other artists, right? Art that they like, right? So you can look at their tastes. You can look at, you'll find a bunch more than you need to, right? And that should just browse on it for like 30 minutes, an hour, and then still don't draw for that 24 hours, right? When you get the art block, and then just peek into Twitter every now and then, look at art, and then it should give you an urge to draw from seeing so much good art, right? And then you kind of want to look at it at its basic elements, right? And what I mean by looking at it from its basic elements, you look at how the artist does their lines, you look at how their color palette is, you look at, um, how their coloring style is, you look at the tone, like, is there a message that they're trying to send? If all that you're questioning, right? It's open for your interpretation, right? You can interpret the art piece however you want to, because art is subjective. It's different to everyone. It speaks differently to everyone. And then just believe in yourself. That's the last part.
I think that's probably the part I struggle with most usually with these things.
I mean, you might be struggling now with art, but think about yourself like a month from now. Think about what your potential could be 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, right? So, I mean, as long as you maintain like a positive attitude when you're doing it, the only thing that can happen to you is growing, right? If you establish negativity and bad emotions and feelings and stuff when you're drawing, then it's going to push you further and further away from where you want to be, and also stagnate you a little bit, and it'll actually push you away from drawing entirely, right? Wait, are you having fun, Cal? Huh? Are you?
Yeah.
I saw you
Sometimes.
die to that troll
Oh my
thing in
god,
The
like
Legend of
7
Zelda.
times.
You show that
Yeah.
thing the other side of white meat.
I ended up just dropping bombs down from the cliff for like 20 minutes. But no, thank you. That was helpful. I think it's just kind of needing to have the right mindset for it, right?
Yeah, and I know how self-hating you can be, so you gotta work on that, right? You gotta work on loving yourself and your art.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
just keep your head up, Chief. Cause you know what? It's always Tuesday.
Every day is Tuesday.
All right, hair and fur. Who had that? Was that Andy? Frankie? Is Andy even here?
Imagine if Andy's just not here.
I think Andy died.
Andy, come back.
But just so with hair, right? Yeah, never compare yourself to another artist. That's just not how it works. That's not it just does it just does nothing, right? Like one, it's not going to help you get better, right? Because you're not doing anything to improve, and two, it just makes you feel like shit, right? So just don't do it. Forehead. Andy, are you here? Or I will shoot you with my spear.
Not with the spear. Oh no.
Oh no no no.
Andy just spawned into Valheim. It's her first experience. Don't do it.
Oh, wait, just playing Valorant right now.
No, that was. Imagine if she was.
I will kick her. I'll power kick her. Okay. All right.
Skip it for now, maybe.
Yeah, I'll have it ready. But okay. Skip. Wait, hold on. I gotta press the skip button. Okay, skipped. All right, dynamic poses. This was Kirby's question, right? Or Kirby's topic, right? You could talk, everyone here is just peachy keen. It's all right. It's all right. Tell Curtis I said what's up too.
Blade, 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 blade.
I miss his ass.
He's making pork chops right now.
I'll tell him to stop making pork chops and show me some of that love.
He is starving.
Well, tell him
So
to
you
eat
won't
me
get love.
instead.
Lucky.
Okay. So dynamic poses. What are you struggling with dynamic poses?
The flow, I guess.
The what?
I don't like. Okay, I don't know why dynamic poses just feels hard, and I think it's just the flow.
The flow?
Like, I don't know how to describe it. I don't know.
So
When I do it, it doesn't feel right, which I feel like it's part of perspective. Yeah, like action.
so there's a couple things you have to consider when you're doing poses, right? Especially dynamic ones. One, you don't want to break anything, right? What I mean by that is you don't completely want to break their spine in order for you to get it to be like a specific pose. So it's gonna have to follow like a nature. I was about to spell Naruto. There's a naturality that it needs to hold, right? There needs to be balance. And what I mean by balance is their center of gravity balance, right? Is the weight where it's supposed to be, right? If they're putting all their weight on their arm, right? Uh, I've seen some people who do poses to where like the arm is like legit on the ground like this, right? They're holding themselves up, and then the body never touches the ground like that. Right. It can sink a little more, and all the weight would be bearing here and here, right? So then this is where the leg would be. Right. So it's just a matter of, and then this would be the line of action, right? It's basically their spine, and their spine needs to not break, because once you do, because I've seen some people break spines like this, so where like ass is here, and then like back is like, and then they're breaking their neck by like looking at you at the same time, like hey. Right, you don't want to do that either, because the spine has to twist and contort naturally with the body so that it can look natural, right? If it doesn't look natural, it seems off-putting, right? And if it seems off-putting, then it looks bad. This is actually the one thing, right, that regular people can see in art, surprisingly, right? Like, if it doesn't look natural, right? If it looks like something's breaking, people who don't do art will notice this. Because they see everyday people, right? They see, they look up crazy stuff, like they watch porn, like it's just like they know what the limitations of bodies do, right? But then it's weird because a lot of artists actually run into this, like we're not the same people as the viewers, right? We're like, oh, this looks crazy good, right? And then all of a sudden, like you're breaking spines and all that. But then I'm just like, what the heck? Like a non-artist can see this. So don't break body parts, right? If it's shoulders, if it's spine, if it's neck, if it's like your feet, right? I've seen people do feet like this, right? Like who has, is this like a monkey's? Like they'll break it like that. And I'm like, holy crap, this person's an extreme ballerina, right? If it looks off-putting, fix it, right? Fix it to make it to where it looks natural. There's balance, right? Because the foot can only bend a certain, like body parts can only bend up to a certain degree, right? For it to look natural. I would say try to look up how much hyperextension can happen with every body part, right? Because I'm pretty sure everyone knows that like your arm right here can actually invert slightly,
Yes.
right? If this is inside of the elbow and this is the elbow, right? It can hyperextend up to that point, but that's really pushing it. And I mean, you could see stuff like this, like exaggerating pieces hyperextend when someone is stretching, right?
Mhm.
Like you can see it in that pose, whereas someone stretches. That's where you'll see it the most. There's there's back extensions and stuff, but don't like fold them. If this was their kneecap, don't like fold them inside themselves like this, like they're a piece of meat inside a sandwich or something, right? Don't do that. In terms of being dynamic, right? Don't play it safe when it comes to your regular picture posing, right? Like I see a lot of people go with like the neutral 3/4 perspective, right?
Yeah.
And you can mix it up, right? You can do a side profile of the same thing and catch like a different type of angle, right? You can go a little higher up in terms of, instead of the camera being here, right? Move it up more like this, so you get more of like an aerial view. And then they're still looking up at the camera. Right? You can have someone who's sitting Indian style like this, right? Straight on. Or you can be all up on their leg, right? If this is the picture, like their kneecap is like right here, and then basically you have like a zoomed up close perspective. So it's a matter of changing angles and stuff. Right? Like what pose looks better? Like a default straight on pose like this, we'll label this as 1 or 2, right?
Mhm.
Like which one? Which I'm legitimately asking. Like which one do you think would look better?
2, clearly.
Yeah, because it's dynamic, right? You're not only are you is this the same pose? It's just a different camera angle, right? Sometimes you need to. Sometimes a full body shot like this is boring, right? This one barely shows full body, but it's a lot more interesting to see because it's closer up and you're getting a different angle. It's from the bottom, right? You do a lot of things with it, right? The only thing you're changing is where the face is looking, right? Because the face is still looking at the camera here, but now everything kind of changes because you have gravity pulling the hair this way. And then this person can give like the thumbs up because yay gravity. But yeah, so I would play around if you want like more dynamic poses from basic poses. I would
Oh,
start.
there.
I would start off that way.
There
What's
you
up,
go. Dan
Curtis?
says hi.
Tell him I only know him as Curtis.
Oh. You left. Yes.
But yeah, so I would say, if you wanted to start practicing slightly dynamic poses right before you get into like dynamic poses, like
Yeah.
dynamic slash action poses, um, I would do simple poses first, but change the angle.
Okay.
Just to help get you started a little bit. So that way you're not like neck deep into dynamic poses and you're freaking out because things look wrong and stuff. You're playing it safe, but you're also challenging yourself with a different perspective and not doing the full body.
Yeah.
Okay. That's my 2 cents. Gravity rocks. All right. Schnellball. Color palettes. Wait. Was this Snowball's question?
I actually don't remember, but I think she agreed on it.
Kai also mentioned this one, but color palette was going to be the thing that I like brought up.
What's the one? Is this the one that? Wait. So what's the topic you want to know about or expand on?
For me, the struggle with color palettes is that like I kind of use color palettes that I find off of like Pinterest as a starting point, but I struggle with utilizing those colors in a way that they work well in a piece together.
So there is a special handy dandy tool called on CSP. It's Control U, right? And that changes the hue, color, and saturation, right? Or wait, I got that wrong. Hue, luminosity, saturation, and luminosity, right? So if I took a piece like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And let's say I'm going to okay. I'm going to play around with the skin color, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I hit Control U, there's going to be a box that comes. And I don't think you guys can see it in the stream, right?
Yeah.
No.
Hold on. I'm getting a picture of it.
But it looks like that. So if I move the top bar to the right, I'm changing her skin color,
Mm-hmm.
right, to a different hue, whether it's green, aqua, blue, right? Let's say I want her to be like a red demon or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to pick a reddish color, right? And then I want it to be more saturated, right? So I want this to be have more of a reddish color. So I'm going higher in saturation, right? This would be max. And then I want her to be a little darker or something, right? Kind of like an Oni-ish, right? So then I changed the luminosity because if I went brighter, it would be too much of a human skin color, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I want it to be more like of an Oni-esque red-ish type. So then I'm moving it down in luminosity to a point, and then once I find the luminosity, right, this would be like if she was out in the sun a lot, she's a little burnt, crispy, she's a little quippy. But moving it down, and then since I found a color I wanted, I replay with like the saturation. Like, do I want it more towards gray? Do I want it faded out, or do I want it like more red, right? And then that's like the color palette that you're playing around with. And then once you've picked a solid color choice, right? Because these are all the shades
Mm-hmm.
of what a regular skin color would be, right? So I can just color drop the colors that I picked for future pictures. Like you can also do this with any of them, actually. Like I could.
But what if you're not like using CSP?
They should all art programs should have a hue, saturation, luminosity change. Can we confirm that from my Procreate users? Whoever uses Procreate.
Okay.
Yeah, they all art programs should have a hue changer. Yeah, and then you can do this with hair too, right? If you want to change like the hue of the hair, you can go more saturation, and then you can change it to what you want. I like this one. This one's nice, right? I can make it brighter and then change the saturation of it a little bit. Do I want more color? Do I want less color? More color looks pretty nice, and then we can change it into a slightly darker thing to kind of match the tone. But yeah, once you find the colors, you can color drop it for your own palette because you created this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you're basically just seeing what colors work best with each other. And then once you kind of build your color set portfolio, right, which is what I did here on the right, I have colors that I've used, colors that work well together, right? These are for gold, right? All the ones that have yellow over here are good for gold, and there's different tones, right? There's different tones that work for each. Like this is a lighter brown. This goes straight into like a dark olive green. This one stays relatively brown, but there's only 3 color shifts. So you can't go wrong once you kind of play around with colors a little bit and understanding color theory, and then you can bridge your own color palette from there, right? This one called Horse is strictly color picked from an artist that I'm trying to figure out how he uses his colors. And I'll show you some of his pictures. He uses it so well. Right? And this one is this color here. It's also the same nose color. And then they actually use like a lot of the, well, I basically color picked like how he uses like the gray lighting for like the blackish stuff and everything. I'll go from like the light color, the base color, and then I'm just kind of figuring out what tones he's using. This is an undertone color. This was screened over. Wait, this isn't screened over. This is just normal paletted over, but with low opacity. Right, so yeah, this color set is all color picked from this person's artwork. And I'm just studying how they use it. I'm trying to see what I can do with a simple color palette like this. Because if you look at the hair, he really doesn't use much. He really doesn't use much to color the hair with. It's very area based. Everyone can see that, right? If you want to use more you're probably too high in the you're okay. In terms of the CSP cube, let me find a picture. All right, Kai, you're probably playing around too much in this area.
Too much saturation.
Yeah, it's all very high in saturation. And if you remembered how the color wheel is broken up, going from here to here is saturation. Going up and down here is value, and then going around the wheel is hue, right? When I pick colors, and I used to watch like a bunch of YouTube videos and stuff like that, and um, Natsu was a person that I watched a lot of videos for. She uses a lot of colors around this area or like this zone, right? And that also hurt my eyes. So I dialed back my palette to roughly here and here, right? There's some exceptions to where like I'll play around here for like the darker toned colors, but it's mainly this zone. And I found it to be a lot easier to mix colors when you're in this zone because you're closer to gray, right? You're closer to the blacks, you're closer to the whites. And when you're closer to these three colors, white, black, gray, or white, gray, black, it's tonal neutral, right? There's no color in gray, white, or black, so it's a lot easier to mix colors and stuff with when you're playing with heavily desaturated colors, right? And even when I'm looking at horses' colors, right? The colors don't really pass this midline of the square up here, right? So if I'm picking, they're playing more towards the left hemisphere of the box itself. Like you'd be surprised how light a color goes once you get to like near the midline of this hemisphere, and you can't see it. So do it in pink, right? You'd be surprised how colorful a color is near this midline is. Like this zone, no, I'll never touch this zone again. It's gross. It's too bright. The only time I'll probably use like a super saturated color like that is when I'm doing like jewelry or something, or something needs to be vibrant, like a gem getting hit by a light needs to be like sparkly, shiny, crystally, right? You know the saying, don't you, Kai? The saying goes, strongly makes me crystallized. All right. So we are. So does that help answer your question, Kai and Snowball? I wouldn't say darker colors. I don't like the term darker colors. I would just use the term desaturated. Because if you're going darker, you're going to be like hovering like the bottom hemisphere of the square. Yeah, they're more desaturated colors versus darker colors. Goodbye, whoever. Andy left.
Andy's gone. No.
Okay. Color palettes. All right, Venus. What do you need to know about line weight? You can talk unless your guitar is hooked up to your microphone again. Yeah.
Yep.
So, are you talking in terms of line weight or lined width? So, a good tip to making things where to add line weight is basically if there's something overlapping, right? And you've heard of ambient occlusion, right? So ambient occlusion is basically like it's 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 basically black where the sun or where the light source absolutely doesn't reach, right? Yeah. All right, Cal. Have a good one. And say hello to Tuesday for me. Okay, so if we were to take line weight into account, right? It means typically we put line weight. I haven't put it on. I barely put any line weight on this one so far, so this would be like a good example for you to see. But it's mainly in areas that overlap each other, right? And what I mean by overlap is you can see one already right here where the two boobs meet. It's actually going you're it would be safe to add line weight here because you're overlapping the boob with the skin on the back right here. It happens up here as well. And also I would add some line weight here on the neck, right? Because that's the part where it kind of pivots, right? So you would see like a bulkiness in shadow in that area. The other portion is Let me find an example. Yeah, let's take this one. If there seems to be an overlap, right? You can add line weight. Like, let's say there's an overlap where the pants gets wrinkled a bit, right? You can add line weight there. This is still like a sketch, but doesn't hurt to add line weight to it. Like for instance, the skin portion right here where it meets overlaps. So you can add some thickness. It's mainly seen in a lot of hair, right? Where you can add thickness to the 2 points here. Basically, anywhere that overlaps, you can add line weight, right? I don't know if that helped or not. Yeah, this would be an easier one to explain. Do you see how this would create like a little hole or whatever here? You can add thickness here and black it out, and then change the color of it in your, when you lock your line art. But this shadow here, you wouldn't be able to see with or without light source anyway, because it's creating like a pocket. You can also add thickness in like the line here. So you can add thickness here, right? Because it's bulkier in this area. Anywhere where there's going to be like an overlap, right? Like I said, this line right here overlaps this part of the pants, right? And then also this portion of the pants overlaps the skin, right? Anywhere where you think there's it's going to be condensed, you can add a weighted line. Like this portion here, you see how there's a crinkle in the wrinkle? Crinkle in the wrinkle. You can add line weight here as well. And then I can add some, and then since this overlaps the front part, I can make this one thicker as well. This line here, I can just shade out and add thickness in a larger scale with here. Same with here. And then where these two meet, the two fingers touching each other can have line weight too. And then this can be subtle. This one here, you can make bulky. as well. But yeah, do you see where I added them here? You can do it. It's easier to do it in hair. I would say start in the hair first. Mainly where like the V section is, but you have to follow like the light source, right? Since the light is coming this way, most of my weighted lines are on the right side and not the left side. Do you see how it's weighted on the right side? This one is on the left side because um, this one's higher up, and I wanted this to be lighter. Oh, this part? That's because once you get like in here, uh it starts to get less visible, right? So I wanted to use a thinner line as it gets less visible as a representation of it being like a smaller breast size cup. Because there's not as much skin folding into this midsection area, right? If this were like uh D cup, right? I would definitely have like a thicker line going down because there's skin underneath here, right? Whereas for like a B cup, um, instead of the breast hanging over it like this, right? It's more of like a subtle hump, right? Like if we were to look at this from like this would be like the midsection and then like we have like belly button here. Um D cup breasts would be like this, right? Whereas B cup breasts are more gentler in transition from the midsection. Yeah. Right. There's not that overlap, right? Because a person can definitely like take their D cup and like hold it like a sandwich. Right. They can get like you ever had a hoagie roll? Like a sub from Subway? Yeah. Yeah. But they can hold it with two hands, right? A person with like A cup, B cup, it's going to be a lot harder for them to grasp both sides because most of the weight or mass is like here, and it's a lot smaller in mass as well. I mean, you can still do it. It just won't be as like it won't be a Subway hoagie. No problem. All right. Give me a couple minutes. You guys can stretch, stand up. I'll be back.
To be continued.
Right? I would mix it up. And mixing it up could also mean like you change the position of the hand, right? As well as the body. So now instead of a sideways hand, you have a hand that's straightforward, right? And also, like you can move the leg inside as well. You can have both arms going this way, and then you can have like the foot in the back or something like this. So then you're switching up the same idea, but you're moving body parts in a way that it still works, but you're still getting the same quote unquote idea on the table, right? She wants to have one or two hands on the ground, and then she's also uh posing in a way where it's like magazine-esque, right? Also, um, if it's a laying down pose, you can have her on her elbows instead, right? We can put one leg out like this, so where it goes back in. And then this other one would just be back here too. Something like that. You're playing around with it. If somebody calls for the same thing, you could still do a laying down pose in like a similar fashion, right? But you can have her arm up, fixing her hair or something. This would be more rotated slightly. So I'm going to bring the breasts a little bit up because we're going to see some stomach now. And then she's going to have one leg out in front and then the other one back here. Right? So you're just mixing you're just adjusting different things to not get the same pose that you did before, right? And it could be small adjustments. So you can change the positioning of the arms, a shift in body positioning, right? The way the legs are positioned. Maybe play around with camera angle, right? If you're doing it's exactly like this one, right? If you're doing a similar pose like this, you can change the camera angle and get a completely different perspective, and it feels like a different pose, but it's still kind of like the same idea, but it's a different idea because now you have a different angle, you have a different perspective, you have a different um, outlook on the same pose, but it's just a different outcome of the same pose, right? Does that make sense? Did I lose you? What's the other question? Which Arknight's drawing? Oh, that one? That's Azure Lane. Yeah, it's a Tago. I actually didn't come up with the idea. The commissioner came up with it. He was like, I want her to be pointing in the sky, and this is the background that I want similar to. And then I was like, okay. But this was for commission, and the idea was already come up with. I just made it happen. Yeah, so I mean, that's why doing commissions is always nice too, because the commissioner, depending on which commissioner you have, they'll already have an idea and you just have to make it happen. I mean, I could have had her arm go like straight up. I could have had her arm down here, right? I could have had like a more dynamic pose with like the legs splitting apart too. I just thought this would have been a cuter thing, right? Because arms going in like that means that you've accomplished something. She launched a rocket, right? As well as launching rockets in a lot of people's pockets. Okay, Snowball, have a good night. But yeah, there's like a lot of poses that I could have went with, right? I could have had the perspective of bottom up to where she's like a lot closer to the rocket. Um, for example, I could have had her. I could have had her pointing up like this in this perspective, looking down at the camera, right? And then had like the explosion here and then like a different angle of the rocket, right? It's all about working with camera angles. Um, because you can easily do a scene like this where it's kind of neutral, or you can play around and make it, a little bit more epic. There's like an epic scale, I like to call it. Like the closer things are, the more epic it is and shit. So definitely play around with camera angles a little more. You can play it safe. I think this is playing it safe. And also I was thinking of like, I was also being lazy because I finished this in like a day. After the sketch was shipped out and approved, right? It's just because I wanted it a little easier on myself because I have like 10, 12 commissions to do. And I was just expediting it. But yeah, hope that helped. Art, style, dissection, and incorporating it into yours, right? So, it was relatively easy to explain. It's basically like you wanna take certain things that you like and combine them, right, into your own style. Like first, you have to be able to somewhat replicate their style, right? If I took someone like one of my favorite artists, Zhang He, right, and then I just wanted to, I liked his eyes, right? I'm going to take his eyes and then see if I can replicate them. Right. So you're building it into your muscle memory, and then as long as you can get it to work with how you operate, you can kind of incorporate it into your own style, right? Let's say I don't like all these eyelashes and I like condensing them into 3 or 4. I would do 3 or 4 instead of doing what they did with the bajillion eyelashes, right? So it's just that's how you kind of turn it into your own style. But yeah, so basically you would replicate it through reference and then see if you can build a style that you like from it. Why is it on Eclipse? Right. If you like how they do hair, you would look at how they draw hair, right? This, hold on, where's the artist? Let me find him real quick. Okay, this one. This artist, I really like how they do hair. Right. Yeah, I really like how they do hair. And when I did the where the hell is it? When I did the Kaching piece, I actually tried out their style in my own in terms of like individualizing certain strands like this, right? You can see that I did it in similar fashion. And then also how they scribbled the eyes, I like too. So I tried scribbling as well. So then you could try out different techniques, different ways of doing things that you notice. Like I noticed more individual strands in this one. So I tried it out, giving it more gaps in hair, having a lot more white space. When I noticed that theirs turned out really well with that. So I tried it out. And the way that they didn't use sheen in their hair. I didn't use a bright colored sheen for it. I just kind of tried being a little more messy in terms of scribbling a line here, right? And then they did the same thing, right? I noticed that they just kind of put it in places and erased, and that's kind of what I did to try it out, and I actually liked it, right? Definitely would do this more, and it doesn't have to be perfect. This is the very essence of being messy and being this is the very essence of calculated scribbling, in my opinion, right? If you look at the leather and stuff, it's just a bunch of scribbles and some very light blurs, right? But when you zoom out, it works. Right? So you can take not only like anatomical art styles, but you can take coloring styles and try to test it out and see if it works for yours, right? If it works for yours, you can keep it in your arsenal to kind of work with, or you can scrap it, right? You kind of pick and choose until you develop your own style that you like, and synchronicities, right? Because a lot of what you draw and your style is based off of what your inspiration style is. Because if they are your inspiration, then there's something about their art speaks to you, right? And if you're an artist, you want to draw something that you like seeing. And what you like seeing is your inspirational artist's work. That makes sense, right? Shut up, Bill.
You shut up.
All right. So we're going to go back to hair and fur. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Okay. Here it is. Okay. So okay. What color should the hair be? Hmm. Hmm. Blue? All right, we'll go blue. It's pretty botchy, but whatever. Okay. And we've all seen this, right? It's like the bunny tail on the back of like a bunny maid outfit, right?
Yep.
I'll show you guys an easy way of coloring this.
Wow.
And then this way is for, okay, I'm just going to scribble. Okay. Okay, so for hair, right? I've noticed that with hair, it's best if you wanted to multiply, right? But you want to get the base of, you need to know what's in front, right? If this hair is in front of this part right here, you kind of want to show that by adding the back end of it and it creating like an illusionary effect like this, right? Because it allows the viewer to see that this strand is still continuing up, right, past this portion. You kind of want to do that with the majority of it. You can add some darknesses at the top if you wanted, and keeping this strand by itself, right? And then you can erase, going with the flow of how the hair is, right? So you see how the hair curves like this. I'm just following the natural curve of how this hair is curved, right? And then let's say I just add a couple more, and then I'll add another bit of dark at the bottom, right? And then you can kind of see how it's taking shape where the shiny bits are, right? So you can lower that opacity to whatever number you want. And then since I want it to kind of blend in, I want the colors to kind of push into the middle here, while barely touching the hard definition ones, right? So we get this now. Wait, okay, I like that better. So we get this. I'm gonna go back on the multiply layer again. I'm gonna use the same color. And then we're going to add some detail now. Just add slightly more harder shadows. Okay. And then now we're going to add a gradient to it. A slight gradient. If I can. Wow, it's not soft. A soft gradient to it. Just to show that there's like a subtle shadow, not the whole thing. And then we can lower the opacity. It's subtle, but it's enough, right? And then we can add a lighter color on a screen layer. I'm using this with G Pen. And then this is going to cover, and then I like making it into like this shape, right? It's like a U shape with it. And then I'll grab an uneven brush. It's like this. It's like a square brush. And then I will erase down. And then I'll take bits and pieces out. And then I'll lower the opacity for that, just to give it like a slight sheen effect. Right, maybe have this curl up more. And then I'm still on the eraser tool, so I'm gonna section some of these off. Okay. And then if you did want to add an add glow effect or whatever, because the light source is up, you could do that. And then that would be hair. And then you would go onto the layer above. This is the line art layer. And then you can grab a skinny brush. And then if you wanted some extra strands that follow the same color, you would just color pick, right? And then add the individual strands itself in the same flowy manner, right? And then you would have hair. Simple. For fur, I feel like is pretty easy. I'm gonna use two colors, a mid-sec tone and then a darker tone like that. So when you're doing fur, you kind of want to start with the darkest tone first, and then you're making. Notice how it's slightly opaque, right? The opacity is kind of low. The density of the brush is kind of low. And then I am just making little dash marks like this, right? And why are we using the darkest color? It's because when we switch over to the lighter color and then we pull down, right? Oops. And then what the heck? Okay. And then if we pull like a lighter color over on top. Okay, where's my brush? We can make it lighter. You can add some bits here if you wanted. It could be messy. It's fine. It's fur. It's supposed to be messy. And then we take the original color, and then that's when we can mold it into something we like. Just play around, scribble a little bit, and then, yeah. Yeah, so that's how you could just be as messy as you want with fur, to be honest. Right, and then the same rules can apply to the bunny one, but instead of little dashes like this, right? We're just dabbing. And then we dab with the second color to make it brighter, and then we take the base color and then we dab it. And then if you want it to be more pronounced, you can dab it with a harder pen, more opacity. And then there you go. And that is it. Yeah, you just for fur, you just kind of have to match the tendencies of how it is. If it's fluffy and circular and curly, you're gonna use circles, and then if it's more straight line fur like fox fur and stuff, you're just going to use like dashes and shit. But yeah, you can cut it. And what was your question about